Hi, my name is Alyssa. I am the host of Stories and Spoilers, the podcast, and I am so happy to be here and introduce a wonderful independent author. We're talking spooky, we're talking moths, we're talking maybe a little bit of suspense. Tom, tell them more about yourself.
Hi, I'm Tom. You can find me on Instagram at Tom is writing. I am an independent author. I've just released this week my horror novella Moth of the Marsh, which is a creature feature inspired by, well, first and foremost, inspired by my husband. I wrote it for him. He is very much the main character of the book, and it's got some elements of teen movies in there. It's got a little
Ooh.
bit of B movie horror from the 80s, but at its core is a creature feature novel. Yeah.
Have you always been into creature features and like spooky books? If so, what was your first one that made you like fall in love with the genre?
Um this my first spooky book, my first like actual sink my teeth into spooky book was It by Stephen King.
Ooh.
I think I was about 12 when I read that for the first time, which is pretty intense for a 12-year-old to read. But I originally, one of my friends when we were really young had like a double VHS copy of the movie with Tim Curry, and we would
Wow.
pass it around each other and watch it and absolutely scare ourselves. Um, and then when I was like got to the reading age where I could understand Stephen King, I read it. It was the first Stephen King book I read. And I've pretty much been hooked on horror ever since. I've never really been, in honesty, never been a massive fan of creature features just because I've always leaned more into paranormal and ghosts,
Mm.
spooky things like that. Um, but my husband absolutely, I would say like 90% of the books that he reads are creature features. And a couple of years ago, he was reading one and he got really hooked. It was called Killipede. And it was set in the UK, and he finds it quite difficult to find books that are set in the UK, especially creature features. So
Mm.
a really just like a flying comment, I just said, "Oh, I'll write you one," and he took it seriously. So I had to take it seriously, and Moth of the Marsh was born.
Wow. I found the description on Goodreads. Is it okay if I read it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. As the ground trembles and the shadows dance, a group of friends are drawn to an ancient enigma. But some lights are best left unchased, for they lead to secrets buried deep, waiting to consume all who dare to uncover them. In a town built on memories, the past is not dead, it is hungry. Your book sounds so good. It's at 148 pages, so it is a perfect novella size.
Yeah,
The cover has like it's zoomed in like a moth, like
giant
its
moth.
face, its
Yeah.
fuzzy face, and then it's got a black background.
Mhm.
Man, I when I think of it and I think of Stephen King, I the first thing I think of when I think of Stephen King is actually Misery. But I
Mhm.
I have the same last name as Stephen King, so growing up, people would be like, "Oh, you related to him?" I'm like, "No, we are not related to that man." But I when it comes to horror and the elements of horror, I feel like a trope that happens quite often is like bury your gaze. We never survive. And I was wondering, how do you kind of flip that trope a little bit in your book? Do you feel like that's really prevalent, or do you feel like it's gotten kind of better recently?
I think it's really interesting you ask about it with Moth of the Marsh because I was very conscious of it whilst I was writing that I didn't want to. So without going too far into spoilers, the it starts in present day and it ends in
Mm-hmm.
present day, but
Okay.
the meat of the story happens in 2010. So we start the book with a young queer couple at the marsh. Oh, a cat.
Oh yes, this is my cat. This is my cat Midnight. He's my little
Mm.
fur baby.
Oh, he's
He
so
loves
cute.
cuddles. He's actually in every episode. So even when people don't see him, he's sitting on my lap, or
Love
he'll be
that.
in the background like hopping over my computer, but he's actually always here. So my partner and I, this is our furry son. He also likes scary stuff. Whenever I read something scary, which I will be reading your book, my cat actually just goes under the covers, so I never feel too scared.
You've always got the protection.
Yes, I do have the
Mhm.
protection. He's kind of like my Salem. Like if there's Sabrina and the Teen Witch,
Yeah.
he is exactly that.
Mhm.
He's my gunkle, you know, he's part of the community. I know it. I know it. And I'm just I just know that like he will not put up with any demons or anything spooky. He's like, we just don't have time for it. I don't have
Yeah.
time. So I'll show you what. So
I
that
love
is
that. I love
Midnight's
that.
energy. He's like, yeah, actually no. I'm like, okay, great. Fantastic. Fantastic.
That's why
So
I have a white cat called Magnus. And
um
he is the absolute, he's named after Mrs. Honey's dad from Matilda. But he's the absolute opposite. Like, even though black cats are very like, people have the superstition and things like that, Magnus is, he is a demon.
ooh,
I have a book up there about Magnus at one point in my life. I think like he's literally like sent from hell, sent to terrorize.
oh my
And
gosh.
but I love that about him. He's like we're like best friends. In the
He's my
acknowledgements,
problem. He's
yeah,
my
he's
problem.
we're together. We're the problem. That's what it is.
Oh my gosh.
In the
You should write.
acknowledgements of
I
the
would read a
book,
book about that. If you did like a pet cemetery, like my cat is haunted.
yeah, completely. Like
I would read that.
cat is possessed. Yeah, yeah.
I actually, I
It's
think
up
I would
there.
read that. Yes,
I need to form it, but it's definitely up there.
for
But
sure.
yeah, it was very conscious in my head about. So we start with a young queer couple, and we end with the
Mm.
same queer couple. And basically, one of them is, they really love scary, spooky stories, and they've been brought up on the legends of the marsh.
Ooh.
So the book is kind of them telling their friend, maybe partner, about what happened at the marsh. And I kind of bookend the story with them, because the main character of Moth of the Marsh, James, which is based on my husband James, um, he goes through a journey throughout the book, and you kind of, there's some chapters there where you see that he struggled with his sexuality, and you see that he struggled with bullying and things like that.
Oh wow.
Um, but without spoiling things, he goes through quite a journey and a quite a transformation in the book that I was very conscious of. He doesn't die. Spoiler alert, he doesn't die.
Good.
But
I wrote this about my husband. Does he die? Horrifically. Oh gosh.
to be fair, he would have absolutely loved that. And that was
Oh
the
my
point of
gosh.
writing it, because I didn't want to kill him, because he was the main character and he's also gay.
Mm.
Um, but I also wanted to make sure something horrific happened to him, because
Ooh.
I don't think my husband would have been happy with the ending where something really bad didn't happen to him in the main character of the story.
Interesting. Oh, I love this. Okay, I have another question for you. If you and your husband could be put into any horror movie, which horror movie would you want to be put in?
Okay, we're very polar opposites with this, because he I like, horror is like a massive part of like me. Like, I absolutely love it. Like, I grew up in a haunted house. Like, it's very much like
What?
I love all of that. So I would like to be in something like Insidious or Paranormal
Mm.
Activity. I've always said, and this is going to make me sound insane, but I've always said that I would love to be possessed. Um,
Tell me
because
more.
so you
What do
see
you
it in
mean
the
by that?
films, you see it in the films, and you read it in the books where these people are possessed and horrific things happen to them, but by the end of the book or by the end of the film, they're absolutely fine.
Mm,
They might break their necks, they might do the crab down the stairs, but they're fine at the end. Once the demon's gone,
that's
there's no
true.
broken bones. There might be a little bit of trauma, but like, we all have trauma.
Indeed.
So
Therapists.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
Therapists.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, I think that like it would just be a fun time. Whereas James absolutely hates that. He he doesn't like the spooky stories, spooky films, and things like that. So if you were to ask him, he would 100% say that he would love to be in Saw, which I think's
Interesting.
worse. I think that's a million times
It's like
worse.
torture porn. It's torture
Exactly,
porn. Yes.
exactly. Oh
Yes.
no. James thinks that Saw has like plot.
Ooh.
and he watches it because it's got lore, and he understands the journey that
Oh,
the
the rules, because it's a game.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
because of the game, and the characters, like he thinks it's like it's not touch porn, it's like cinema. Which I mean,
Interesting.
to each their own, if that's how he feels. But yeah, he's very much that end, and I'm the other end of I like ghosts and paranormal and things like that.
Ooh. I'm a scream girl. So I want something that's like there are rules, but they're based on like
Hmm.
tropes. I
Hmm.
kind of like that. Also, like I wouldn't mind like a movie finally touching base about like bury your gays and actually subverting that.
Hmm.
And like I kind of like the idea of like the gays are the killers.
Yeah, yeah. Have you
I
read
would read that.
Have you read Bury Your Gays by Chuck Tingle?
No, no, I
It's it's
haven't.
it's it's it's, it's, it's exactly that. Like it is. It's a story about um a, a a movie writer who, at the start of the story, he is told by his producers that he needs to bury the gays in this TV show that he's writing, and he refuses to do so. And there's like a weird paranormal element to the movie studio where the characters that he's written start haunting him because he's refusing to do what they tell him to do. But
Ooh.
I really, if you want that kind of vibe, I really do recommend Bury Your Gaze.
Okay, yeah, I think I do. I actually looked it up on Goodreads. I do have it on my TBR, but I have like 1,000 books on there. I'm like, Lord, help me. So I'm just gonna move it up. I don't give a dang.
Yeah,
I'm gonna move it up.
I really recommend it.
Yes, there was a short story in this horror indigenous anthology called Never Whistle at Night. And I won't spoil the story, but the story is following two gay men, and the title is um Navajos wear elk, or Navajos don't wear elk teeth. I think that's what it's called. And when I tell you, I was like, I there's a guy and he meets this other like sexy cute guy, and like he's staying at like a beachfront like resort, and the hot guy is like, oh, I have a box of like teeth. He like collects them, and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting hobby.
Mhm.
But then there's like he's like, oh yeah, there was this elk tooth in there, and like, yeah, my ex boyfriend gave it to me, and the main character's like, that looks like a human tooth, and the guy's like, nah, nah. And long story short, one thing leads to another, and you end up discovering this like really dark, twisted relationship, if you can even call it that. And one of them may be like a serial unaliver, and it's not
Ooh.
it's very like it's really dark, but it was an
Mhm.
interesting short story that touches base on like the single white female vibe, where it's like you meet
Mhm.
someone, they're attractive on the surface, and you begin to realize how like really messed up they are. That element that actually has always creeped me out, and I was wondering that from a writer's point of view, if you were to kind of meet a character and they're attractive, they're charismatic, everything's good in the beginning, and then you begin to realize like they are the monster, the killer, the beast. Is that something that you find really creative, or do you feel like it's kind of like predictable? Like, what was the hot one?
I think it is a little bit predictable, but I also
Mm.
think that there is like an element of it, and I guess this kind of goes back to Scream as well. Scream's one of my favorite movies. It kind of goes back to like it's always the person that you least expect, but you most
Mm-hmm.
expect. So like I think like it is got to the point now with the genre of horror that like you're going to be led on by these hot
Yeah.
characters or like by these really quiet characters, and then it's going to throw a curveball in the end, and it's going to be this character that you saw in the first act that you haven't really seen since, kind of thing.
Spoiler alert for folks who have not seen Scream yet.
Sorry.
You've had years, y'all. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it. A spoiler alert for Scream. But when the two best friends end up being the killers, and they're two very good looking guys, my
Yeah.
add. I I used to think, I was like, oh, they're together. Hear me out, hear me out, hear me out. Okay.
Oh, they are. They are. That's my
I
head.
had to my brain. I was like, are they together? Because they're planning the killings. They both had girlfriends. One of them unalives one of the girlfriends. The other one is planning to. They were gonna like there were certain things that were happening. I was like, you know what it's giving? You messed with my boyfriend and I'm coming for you. That's what it gave. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, nah, because the story itself, canon never does confirm that. But for me, I was like, I kind of want to know.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was very curious.
I
It,
like to believe that. I like to believe that that's the truth. Yeah.
yeah, they had the voice changing, the mask, the plan, all of it. I was like, yeah,
Hmm.
it's it's giving something. And I was
It
like, you know
definitely
what?
is.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with
Hmm.
that. I think
Hmm.
the most recent horror that I saw that I'm like, oh, I would love to see this in a book form. Have you seen the film Bodies, Bodies, Bodies?
No, I haven't watched it yet.
It is so
I'm very
good.
late to the party, but I haven't seen it yet.
It is so good. It's not what it is very much like a murder who done it. Um, but when I tell you, like the pacing was really good, the script writing was really good. Like the things that they said, I have heard friends of mine say, when the lights go out and then there's a body, and you're like, but how did that happen so fast? Like, who could it have been? It gives you a little bit of a modern view of like Clue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was like, okay, fun, fun, fun.
Mhm. Yeah, it's definitely it's
Um,
been on my list for a while, but I just haven't got around to watching it just
it's
yet.
fun. Actually, my girlfriend and I went to go see it in theaters, and the lights went out in the theater. Like the actual power went out
Oh
for the
my God.
entire block when we were watching it. So when the lights go out in the movie, and then the lights went out in the theater, we were like, "Oh, it's part of the experience."
Hmm.
30 minutes later, we were like, it was just pitch black. We were like, "Hmm, is this part of the? Is the movie over?" It was halfway through. We were like, "Nah, I can't be that short." And it turned out the movie, like the the power had gone out in the entire block. We were like, we were gonna sit there and wait.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was crazy. But I do also want to know, what are some of your like inspirations when you write? Do you see everything in your mind like a movie, or is it more like as you're writing it down, the story kind of reveals itself?
Definitely the second one.
Mm.
Moth of the Marsh. I mean, this is very typical, but Moth of the Marsh started out as something very different to what it ended up being. So it started out being about a character. So the area, the town that Moth of the Marsh is set in, is the town that my husband grew up in. It was like, and when I first started writing, it was really, really heavily inspired by like the streets that he grew up on, like his friends and things like that. And I had to pull myself away from that because I was going too deep into, I wasn't creating a character, I wasn't creating a setting. I was just kind of like leaning on what I knew from
Mm.
my partner, my husband, and his upbringing and things like that. Um, but as I was kind of getting into it and writing more and more, I started to see the characters that I wanted to talk about come through. James was always going to be the main character because I wrote the book for him. But yeah, it's definitely, as I write, it comes to me. I think that it never really, the story never really appears until about the third draft. And then I
Mm.
realized that I need to start all over again because I've realized what the characters are and what I want them to say, which is a really big thing. What I wanted to focus on with Moth of the Marsh is um, it's a story about friendship, really. It's a scary
Mm.
story. It's a creature feature. But it's a story of this group of friends that decide to skip out on their prom night because the leader of the group of friends was in the running for prom queen, and then someone else kicked her off it. So they all stood by her and said, okay, well, let's not go to prom, let's go camping instead. And you do see the dynamics between this group of friends play out through
Ooh.
the story, which wasn't there in the first draft. In the first few drafts, it wasn't there. It was a story about a new teacher to the town who was finding out about these friends that years ago something happened to them.
Ooh.
And as I was kind of like figuring out what actually happened to them, I was like, this is where the story sits. It's about that one night, and the entire book is essentially set in that one night. And it's gory and it's got suspense in it, but like I said, at its core, it is about the friendships that these people have with each other.
Wow, that sounds actually really, really good. I'm like, man, I might just roll the dice. I have a rule when reading scary stories, and my rule is that I don't read anything scary after like 5 p.m.
Mhm.
So everything spooky or scary I read, I can only read during daylight hours. And the moment it gets dark, I'm a grown woman. I'm like, I'm calling my partner. My partner's like, "What did you do?" Oh, brother. I'm like, "Well, I read a scary story. Now you have to live through this with me. And I can't go to sleep now. My partner's like, overtime. But it's your book. I may actually break my rule because it sounds so good. I was gonna read it already, but now I'm like, I don't think I can wait. I don't think I can wait. I think I'm gonna do what I have to do. Tomorrow's Friday. Why the heck not?
Yeah.
But I also was curious, are there any shows or movies that if you had the opportunity, if they were like, hey, you have the rights and you could like twist up the story a little bit and write your own ending? Is there any spooky stories that you were like, oh, if I could rewrite that and write a new ending or change some things up, I would change up this story?
Interesting. I think again, and it's not the best film series in the world, but it has just like that place in my heart. I absolutely love and adore the Paranormal Activity series.
Mm,
Um, and I think it's because I watched them so young.
same.
And
Yeah.
I've just like that fond memory of I love being scared. I'm the complete opposite to you. I will wait till midnight till it's pitch dark, and then I'll put a scary film on or I'll read a scary book
Oh,
because I like that feeling of like when you're laying in bed and the lights are off and there's a gown dress like a dressing gown on your door and you're like,
stop.
I know what that is, but that's a person watching me. Like there's no better feeling than that feeling.
Wow. Oh, have you
um
seen The Haunting of Bly Manor?
yeah.
That's more sad and scary.
Yeah.
It's more heartbreaking and scary.
Mm-hmm.
Which do you prefer? Do you prefer Haunting of Hill House?
Hill House.
Haunt? Oh, really? Okay,
Straight away.
Haunting
Yeah.
of Hill House or Midnight Mass?
Haunting of Hill House. I really, really liked Midnight Mass.
I did
But
too.
I think that Midnight Mass for me was less scary and more character driven.
Yes.
Whereas I think when Hill House came out, I love the book as well. I love the Haunting of Hill
Oh,
House.
you're a classic person.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
But the series was so amazing because it was absolutely terrifying, and then you rewatch it, and then you see the
All the
ghosts
ghosts
around and things like
hidden.
that, and I absolutely love that. Um,
Ooh. The writing was also so sharp.
it was so good.
Like
Yeah,
Mike Flanagan, to me, that's the only
yeah.
one he did that I was like, oh, this could have been done a little bit better. Was the one with all the kids in the who were all ill and they were it was like the midnight club, it was something like that. The
Yeah.
idea was so good, but the execution, I was like, oh, I kind of wish this was a little bit more um like rated R. I kind of wanted it to be scarier
Mhm.
than it was. That felt like a character study. I'm like, I was like, I wish it would have been a
Yeah,
little more spooky.
it's kind that kind of like when I watched that, it kind of gave he's tried to do his spin on like a Stranger Things kind of vibe
Yeah.
with
Or
like
like
that thing.
Goosebumps.
Yeah, exactly that. Um, but yeah, I think I would change the ending to Paranormal Activity because I think I mean, it definitely sank down towards the
It
end
got off the
way
rails.
too
There were so
much.
many characters. Like
Yeah.
you had the main family, then you had the mother's background, then you had the two girls with the black eyes, and
Mhm.
like I
It
kind
was
of
too
liked
much.
the first one where it was just like the night video where everything was green,
Yeah.
and then you would see someone get yanked down the stairs, like The
Mhm.
Conjuring with the clap one,
Yeah.
and the dark little spooky things like that. Hearing someone screaming behind a door, but you don't see what's happening.
Mhm.
It's not a jump scare. It's like let your brain fill in the blanks.
And
Like
that's exactly where it is. Yeah. Uh-huh.
yes, spooky. Like what is it? There was a paranormal film and it was so like creepy. What's The Conjuring? I think it no, it was the most recent Conjuring movie
You
where they
crashed then. You crashed then for like a couple
oh,
of
I
seconds.
did? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. Yeah, it
Okay.
was the there was a Conjuring film recently. My partner saw it in theaters. They cannot stand scary movies even more than me. There was one where it was like a guy and like he unalived someone, but he was in a
Yeah,
trance.
the most recent one. Yeah.
That one, I was like, this isn't scary, but you know what is scary? The Evil Dead. The Evil Dead is terrifying. That
Hmm.
the sound and the camera zooms in and you
Hmm.
see what like the possession of the mother was like, and then they're stuck in
Yeah.
the original Evil Dead and the recent ones. Terrifying. Do you
Yeah,
agree?
I think that's like one of the remakes of like a classic horror that did it really well with the remake of Evil Dead. Because I think they do both stand as very separate films, but
I agree.
both very, very good. And that's something
Paranormal.
that paranormal, exactly. And also like
Exactly.
Evil Dead's like a very good spin on paranormal as well, because it's not just your typical like
No.
demon kind of thing.
The trees, like there was a remake where the tree's limbs, like the special effects, like them twisting over her, was so like I don't mind the forest. I've actually never been afraid of the forest, but that was one of those iconic movie scenes where I was like, I'm now scared. I am terrified.
Okay,
Spooky,
well,
spooky.
Moth of the Marsh is set in a big forest.
Love
So
it.
just hold
Give it to
yourself
me
to that.
now.
Hold yourself to that. But
I'm
that's like
gonna roll
it
the
was.
dice.
I wanted to very do like a with like how the Evil Dead is very like focused on that. That's something that I wanted to do with Moth of the Marsh. I kind of made the setting a character.
Mm.
So I wanted to make sure that it felt like you were kind of in the marsh as these
Ooh.
characters separated across and they're running from the moth. Um, and like you're seeing into their character, you're understanding more about them, but you're also seeing how the marsh around them and the forest around them is working against them, and how it might not just be this giant moth that is against them throughout the book as
Ooh.
well.
Have you read Stolen Tongues?
No,
Have you heard of it?
no, I'm gonna look at it now.
You need to. It is one of my favorite scary stories. If you have it, if you have the option, if you're okay with audio, I know it's not for everyone. But it does add a little bit to the vibes. It is a man and he's in a cabin with his girlfriend. His girlfriend's dad used to own the cabin. Long story short, non spoilers, something is happening to her. There is an entity that may or may not be able to like, it's practicing trying to like say certain things that its victim said, and it's
Oh,
able to
okay.
transform a little bit. Stolen Tongues, it's set during a wintry, so it's very isolated. There is also woods, so very spooky.
I love
um
that.
yeah, it was one of the most creative like styles I'd ever read of someone trying to scare you with, you know, you hear, you call someone and they say hello, and then it crackles out hello and you hear the tone change. It was kind of like that. Like you hear a knock at the door and it's like, hello, hello, hello. Like the person's voice
Yeah,
changes and you hear a woman, a man, a child. It sounds older, younger, like it's shifting and changing.
that
So
does sound
very
like
spooky.
a good audio to listen to. I might start that tomorrow. That sounds really good.
It is so good. I read it years ago and I still think about like, ooh, heebie jeebies. Like that was
Mhm.
super creepy. And then if you like YouTube and you're okay with like B movie recommendations, like horror, paranormal, all that jazz, I highly recommend Bloodbath and Beyond. Those guys do such good like like movie recommendations for like horror. They also rate things. Dead Meat does the same thing as well. He does like ratings and he actually
Okay,
counts the body count throughout the entire film.
I love that.
It is really good, and he doesn't take himself like too seriously, which I was
Mhm.
like, it could be kind of hard, but if you have a dark sense of humor, it's quite fun.
I think that's another massive part of horror is that horror is at its best when it doesn't take itself too seriously.
I agree. The more
Yeah.
books I find that it's like the authors are a lot more bubbly and optimistic, but their books are like super scary. I
Mhm.
love that like dichotomy. Like I write horror, but as a person, I'm very like approachable. But
And
I write spooky
that is
stuff.
linking back to how everyone has trauma. You've got to
Indeed,
channel it somewhere.
indeed. Have you heard the theory about like monsters? Your monster represents your trauma. Like in a lot of horror movies in different genres, the creature or the monster represents a fear or concern society was having during that time.
Yeah, and it does reflect a lot of the time as well. I've not heard the theory, but like I'm aware of that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes, I'll DM you a video I found. It was like analyzing like Nightmare on Elm Street. I think a few other like classic horror films, but it was kind of I think it was also Halloween. And it was like
Mhm.
this concern of like women walking home at night, young children being babysat by people they couldn't necessarily trust, just things like that. Those normal concerns. And then what's the monster you would match with that fear would be a man
Yeah,
outside.
that's
Like
another thing. That's another thing that I tried to do with the again
it's hard
without
to not
going
spoil
without
it.
it's hard to not spoil it without going too much into it. There's as I said, like you see James go through a journey with his sexuality and try to understand where he fits, and kind of he feels, you see him really feel like he doesn't fit in. And then
Mm.
by the end of the story, he does fit in, um, but not exactly in the way that you would expect him to. So that's something as well that I kind of try to mirror.
Ooh.
Like his journey with his identity is also his journey throughout the events of the book as well. I wanted to make sure that there was definitely that parallel.
Ooh, I'm super excited to like read your
It's
book.
so hard not to talk about it without spoiling things.
I'm like, tell me about your book, but also tell me nothing. Give me
Yeah.
nothing. And you're like, all right, I'll do my best. So like
I'm
you
also like I'm like the biggest, like I love spoiling things for people. Like I will read, as soon as a movie comes out that I like, I'll read the Wikipedia because I just need to know, and then I'll be like, I know what happens in this film. Can I tell you?
Ooh. Okay, so speaking of a recent film that has paranormal and horror elements, how do you feel about the film Sinners? Have you seen it yet?
I'm going to see it on Saturday.
Yes.
So
Okay,
I've
okay.
been so excited to go see it, and then I've been waiting. Me and my friend are going to go see it on Saturday, but I'm very very excited for it.
Ooh, I'm excited to hear your point of view after you see it because there may or may not be a horror paranormal element that links back to like cultural appropriation,
Yeah.
also like that sense of, you know, when like you have a monster or an entity that is so old that like for them like the problems we are facing, they're like, I've seen this 1,000 times, like
Mm,
I'm just here to eat, like I don't really care about your problems, I'm just here to like do what I need to do. The most horrific thing is that like those entities in books, whenever I read like horror and the entity is like, I've been alive for so long, like I don't
yeah.
care who you are or what you want, they're like, I'm just here to survive. Like,
Mhm.
you know, I don't really care how rich you are, like your social status. They're like, I'm just here to live. I'm like, well, you know, that's spooky, spooky. So I
Yeah,
can't
I'm
wait to
really
hear.
excited to see. I've been really interested because we go to the cinema quite a lot, and I've seen. I think I saw like one of the first trailers, and then like whilst we've been like the trailers have shown more and more, and it started off. You didn't
Pretty
really
vague.
find in the first, and then I was like, oh, sexy vampire.
Yeah.
And then you started to like. I've seen the reviews and I've seen people talk about like the depth of it and things. So I'm very excited to go see it.
Ooh,
I should have gone and seen it when it came out, but it's just I've moved house this week, so things have been.
that's okay. I'm not gonna shame
Um,
you. I'm thinking,
but
I'm
I'm
like,
very,
I'm,
oh,
I'm
no,
not
no,
coming
don't
against
shame.
you.
I'm shaming me.
You're like, I know it's been too long. I'm like, did it just come out like a week ago? You're like,
Yeah.
shame. It's totally okay. Have you seen I'm also curious now that I have like a horror lover in my midst. I'm also curious, are you into horror anthologies?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Have you read The Black Girl Survives in this one?
I haven't.
You need to. I think I have, do I have it on my shelf? Uh, it's on my other shelf. But there is a short story in that book I think you'd find really good about it is about a game that two girls play in a dark house. They go to their friend's house and she's like the new girl at school, and they go to her house and her parents are like, it's a big house. And they're like, we're gonna play this game and we're gonna turn off all the lights and we're gonna like I think it was Snap or something, and if we find you, like we win. And you can tell it's creepy. So
Ooh.
they turn off all the lights and the girls are hiding all over the house. And there was a dog at one point. But then like the dog, they're like, oh, we're gonna put the dog outside. The girls forget and they begin to hear like a skittering on the floor. But it's not
Oh.
the dog's outside. And they're far away from their homes. Each
Okay.
story has like a creepy element. And right when you think that this like marginalized community is going to die, something happens and you're like, they survived. But then by the last page, you're like, what was that? And then it leaves you a cliffhanger. And it's so, so good. Like there's another one with like kids who are going to, I think it's called Dancing at the Cemetery. And there's like these kids couldn't dance at their high school. So they go to the cemetery to dance and they may or may not raise something that was not alive. And it comes to life and starts hunting these high schoolers down. So good.
Okay,
It
I'm
was
gonna add
my
this to my
favorite book
TBR.
of last year, and
Have
each
you
story is a different author.
have you read Bad Dolls?
No.
That's another anthology. It's a little bit it's horror, but it's a little bit lighter. It's kind of like it's like a bit Fleabag. So like it's got that
I
kind of
love
like
Fleabag.
feminist like Fleabag kind of lens to it, but it's still very much horror.
Ooh.
And each I think there's 4 or 5 stories in the book. They're all by the same author. And like there's one like about like this like new weight loss craze where it's like an app that gives you an avatar and like this
Ooh.
avatar follows you around. And there's another one where someone goes on a bachelorette party and they do a blood sacrifice. But it's all
What?
like it's very comedic but still very like feminist
Spooky.
deep kind of horror. So it's like more
Ooh.
like reality horror than like supernatural or anything like that. But
Ooh.
I really recommend that.
Thank you. Send that my way. There are so many like I'm very curious. Like when you read horror, do you ever find yourself being like, I had a similar idea, or this is inspiring me to write another book? I'm always curious about that. Like as a reader, do you ever like read something and then your writer part of you comes out and it's like, I think I want to do that, but like with my own style.
I I get really engrossed in books very quickly. So like when I'm reading a book, everything in my head is about that book. So
Mm.
I'm never really reading a book and thinking, oh, I wish I'd have done this or I had a similar idea. But I always leave the book thinking, how can I like add my spin on this or anything like that?
Ooh.
Which is like the book that kind of started Moth of the Marsh Killipede is about a giant killer millipede.
Ooh.
And that was kind of James told me to read that. I read that, and then that's when I was like, I could write you a story about a giant creature that's trying to kill you. Um,
And
um,
he's like, yes.
and
Yeah.
yeah, he was like 100% like let's do it. But I'm terrified of moths, so which is why I did moths. Um,
Why are you scared of them?
because they're so scary.
How so?
There was once I think I was like 13 or 14 and I went to like the toilet in the middle of the night and there was a moth like the size of my hand in
Oh,
the
dang.
bathroom. It looked like a small bird.
Oh.
Um and it's just absolutely terrifying. And I've been scared ever since that. But also David Tennant, the 10th Doctor in Doctor Who.
I know this
Um
man.
he I think so when he was the doctor, what, in 2007, 2006. So I was very, very young then, not very, very young. Um, he said that he was afraid of moths. And I think that I was like, oh, if he's afraid of moths, then I'm afraid of moths.
I do have to say, seeing him in Good Omens as a demon,
Mhm.
I didn't know I needed to see that until I saw it. And I was like, Doctor, what are you doing here? He's like, I'm a demon now. I'm like, oh no, you're even more brilliant than before.
Mhm.
But that's one actor that I think I would like to see in like a spooky movie. I think I
Yeah,
would like
I'm
to
trying to
see him
think
in something.
has he ever done a spooky movie?
I
I'm not
would
sure.
love to see him in a spooky movie. Heck yeah, I would be
Yeah,
down.
I don't think he's ever been in anything quite spooky. He's been in a
I'm
few
telling you.
episodes of Doctor Who that were quite spooky, but yeah, he's never done it.
The Weeping Angels,
Yeah,
those
like hmm.
I have a fear of statues or
Oh,
humanoid
okay.
looking things that are like not like mannequins, statues, the big faces in Egypt, like anything that has a human like face but doesn't move. I have a fear of it like blinking or like coming close
Mhm.
to me, and I 100% think that fear is from Doctor
Yeah,
Who.
yeah.
I don't know.
There's an episode of Doctor Who that you reminded me of when you were talking about the book where like it was like repeating people.
Yeah, stolen
There's an
tongues.
episode of Doctor Who called Midnight, with Stolen Tongues, called Midnight, where he gets stuck. It's David Tennant. He gets stuck on this like tour bus on a planet far away, and an entity possesses someone on this tour bus, and then the entity's kind of power is to repeat people, and then it starts repeating people so much that it starts saying things before the person has already said it. It's called Midnight is the episode, but if that's something that scares you, I do recommend watching that one because it's very
Oh
good.
no, there's a I think it's what I would love to read about, and what always like sparks my like creativity is like things that have lore that stem back from like Greek mythology. They were found in Greece, they're found all over the world,
Yeah,
and you hear about it in modern day, and you're like, that's fake. But then you think about it, and you're like, if it goes all the way back, how would it not be like
yeah,
real?
Mhm.
like very like there's a Greek, I think there's a story in Greek mythology of this woman who her name was like Echo, and she could only repeat what she heard. So if you said like I just want to help you, she would respond with I just want to help you. So it was one of those things where like, but she could only respond to what she heard. She never could
Mhm.
have her own original responses. And then you hear about like skinwalkers that can like transform from like indigenous communities. And just there are certain things where like the lore begins to meld and
Mhm.
create this like this entity that is just terrifying.
Yeah, well, there's I used to be an English teacher, and there a lot of like you kind of like growing up, you're told that like a lot of like genre and a lot of the basic premise of a story about love or a story about tragedy or anything like that comes from Shakespeare, and because he kind of like set the template and stuff. But you a lot of Greek mythology, like a lot of like the stories of the gods and stuff like that, and I think it's very like location specific as well. But these stories about Greek gods and gods and stuff from years and years and years and thousands of years ago, these stories are still being told today, just in very different ways. Like, and I think that's like obviously every story is unique and stuff like that, but at its core, you can see the inspiration that comes from thousands and thousands of years ago.
It I'm so curious like I don't I am curious if you're planning on writing another book in the future.
Yeah. Um, so I have I'm planning on doing a series of novellas like Moth of the Marsh.
Ooh.
And I want to keep these like short and sweet and very kind of location specific. So the next one, I haven't fully formed the idea yet, but it's going to be based on two friends that are like university, college level age. And they're kind of figuring things out, moving out by themselves, and they find something in the house that they've moved to. So that's something that like I want to work on and kind of like bring in the Moth of the Marsh into a kind of series of anthology stories.
Ooh.
And then I'm working on something at the moment that's going to take a lot longer, which is a story of you. It's a little boy, and you see him grow up from the age of 5 up until 25, and you see him haunted by something throughout his entire life, throughout moving houses, like his family changing and things like that. But I want to make that's very much more paranormal focused and much more demony supernatural, but it's
Mm.
going to be very, very linked to trauma and like the trauma that this little boy goes through throughout his life, like when he's a kid, like growing up and things like that.
Oh
Um,
wow.
that's something I started a couple of months ago. I'm working on it at the moment, and I'm really enjoying working on it, but it's giving me nightmares, so I've had to stop.
Oh my gosh.
Because I was writing these stories, like I was kind of like doing loads of little pocket ghost stories about this boy growing up into a man. And then I was going to bed and dreaming that this demon was next to me in bed. And then I woke up one night and turned to James, my husband, to tell him that I had a nightmare. And he turned round, and his eyes were black, just like full black. And in the deepest voice, he just went, "I am a demon." Like, and he just looked, and then I screamed, and then I woke up, and then I turned
God.
towards James, and I was like, "I need to tell him I've just had this nightmare because I'm terrified, but I don't want him to turn around with black eyes and tell me that he's a demon."
Oof, that is
I've had to
terrifying. You
stop
scared
writing that book for
yourself.
now. Yeah.
No, I'm sitting here and I'm like, Midnight's like, he did what? I'm like, what do you mean? Okay, so your writing is so good that you terrified yourself.
I guess so.
And oh no. Midnight's like, I'm an emotional support cat and I have to work double tonight. God. You also mentioned that you lived in a haunted house.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
That's kind of I'm using that as a basis for this this little boy going through trauma and stuff like
That's
that.
you. The story's about you.
It's loosely based on my paranormal experiences. Yeah. Um,
No. No.
I've had like I used to live. My parents used to own a pub when I was growing up, and we lived above this pub, and it was it was it. I tell this story and it sounds made up because of how ridiculous it is, but we had all sorts of we had like windows smashing from the outside in when we lived like on the second floor and there was no way of doing it. I had a big Rottweiler dog who used to growl in a corner. There was like shadows going against the walls. There was like bruises on legs, like on a bunk, like when I slept on the bunk bed. Like it was very, very, very like no explanation for this. And we ended up moving out of it. And my mum and dad would always say that it was my imagination because they obviously didn't want to scare me even more. Um, and around 2 years ago, I spoke to my mum about it, and she said that when she was 18, so far before we lived there, she stayed the night in that pub and she was sleeping on the sofa, and an old man walked up to her and started speaking to her. And she didn't know who this old man was, and then he just disappeared. So all throughout us living in this haunted pub and me being absolutely terrified, my mum was trying to calm me down and not scare me. But in her head, she was like, I've had an experience when I was younger in this same pub. Um, so I must have been terrifying her even more. But yeah, and it was absolutely terrifying living there. I was young, I was scared, so scared, but I love that I've got the story.
I do want to, and thank you for sharing that. I do want to share two podcasts with you that purely focus on like spooky things. The first one is oh my gosh, it is Ghost in the Burbs, and each episode is a different story. This woman begins to interview people in her real town, and she like does the interviews, like she does it in her voice so that they can still stay anonymous, but she interviews people in her town about ghost stories, black-eyed children, entities they see, creatures. There's even a group of women who are part of a coven,
Ooh.
and the coven may or may not have unalived one of their good friends. It used to be four girls, now it's three, and the girl they unalived is now a ghost, and she's like appearing in pictures, and she's showing up like 20 years
Wow.
later.
So
And
these are
these
real
girls,
stories.
this
These are
is
real
true
stories.
stories,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And they're in this small town in Boston. And long story short, the girl that they did this to, at first the person who's leading this podcast is like, you guys killed her by accident. And they're like, well, and then she's like, what do you mean? They're like, well, we may have found a book and like chanted, and like now she's showing up, and like we have kids, and she's showing up in our pictures and stuff. Is that crazy? And she's like, you guys killed her? They're like, killed, accident, like it's, but each story is different. And then you begin to see that the demons in each story are beginning to like recognize her.
Oh.
It's really good. Oh,
I've
it's
just
so good.
followed it. I've just followed it on Spotify. I'll take a listen.
It is amazing. And then a really good episode I think you would enjoy is I think the episode is called like Zora or Zola, and it's about a woman who goes to Africa after I think she goes to Africa, or like she goes to Brazil or something, and she was going through a lot of bad stuff as a teenager. So her parents sent her to this like church group that was going to build houses in a different part of the world. And long story short, she may or may not get possessed by an entity that never leaves.
Ooh.
And it and she, now the woman who's possessed, she's an old woman now, and she does like charity work, but like
Mm.
something's off. And it's, oh, it's, each episode is like, at first you think, oh, like I know what's gonna happen, but then you get to the end and you're like, what do you mean? They're like, they never really got fixed. And it's like, what do you mean? They're like, yeah, yeah, I'm still dealing with it now. And you're like, is it here? And they're like, yeah. And you're like, what do you mean? What do you mean? So it's so good. And the other podcast kind of follows like lore, and it's called I think it's called like When Your Heart Beats Fast, or when a heart starts pounding. The podcast is called Heart Starts Pounding. And this woman, she follows like myths and legends, and she does real life investigations and like research behind these like urban legends and stories. And it's really
Ooh.
cool because the urban legends that everyone thinks are fake, she's actually able to find the real city that it began in,
Oh wow.
Yeah, she's able to find like, oh, you guys thought this is a fake story, but it turns out like there's actually some truth behind
That's
it.
really cool. Have you listened
Yes.
to Ghosted by Ross Hernandez?
No,
It's
I'm
really good. So
following it.
it's like so Ross Hernandez is a queer comedian. She's a trans woman. She's absolutely hilarious. So
Ooh.
she gets other like queer people on the podcast to talk about their experiences with the paranormal, but a lot of the time it's very camp, and very. It's just a funny podcast, even though they're talking about ghosts and things. But they every episode they look on eBay for haunted dolls and like read the descriptions of them and things like that. And I think one episode they had a haunted Captain Jack Sparrow figure from Pirates of the Caribbean. So it's very like it's very tongue in cheek, but it's really really funny and it's like a nice twist on like they're talking about spooky things, but like it's a good time.
That sounds really, really good.
Yeah, I
I
recommend.
do want to close out this episode because I know there's a bit of a time difference and you've stayed up so late. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast, sharing
Thank
your spooky
you.
stories. I cannot wait to read your book. Where can everyone find your book and where can they find you on social media?
So the book is available on Amazon. Just search Moth of the Marsh and it'll pop up. You can get paperback and Kindle. And I'm on Instagram and TikTok. TikTok is very new. At Tom is writing.
Mm, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you
Everyone,
for having
please
me.
like this episode on YouTube and subscribe. Follow on Spotify. Give us a nice rating and follow Tom. Read their book. Be scared. And I'm just so grateful for everyone who listened to this special episode. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alyssa.